teachers who matched with one of their students on Tinder. What's your story? I'm a resident and I've matched with a few medical students, but so far none of them have been under me in their rotations. My roommate unknowingly matched with a guy who had just graduated from the school where I taught. It was a kind of funny passing comment of "oh, I matched with a guy who graduated from X school." We both assumed that it wouldn't be one of my students because I taught sophomores for the most part and this kid was a graduated senior. So we figured it was a funny coincidence rather than weird. She invited him over to our place to hang out. He walked in and introduced himself before he and my roommate went to hang out in her room and watch a movie. I had to text my roommate that the kid had obviously lied about something because A, he was current senior, not a graduated one, and B, I'd had him as a student in my newspaper class. Turned out he lied about his age, said he was 19, and pretended that he didn't know me despite the fact he had class with me. Nice kid, but he never got invited around again. Oh damn. This just happened to a regular at my local. We are there having drinks, as we often do, and he starts telling me that he matched with his 8th grade English teacher, who was 24 when he was 13. Not a crazy age difference. So they chatted and laughed about the coincidence and how weird it was, but they ended up talking 4 hours about life, how they are both divorced, decided what the hell and agreed to meet at our bar that night. She was there like an hour later. She seemed super fun and looked great for 46. They sat next to me and my wife and we all had fun talking, but then they moved to a booth to be alone. 90 minutes and good amount of shots later, they are kissing in the booth. About 10 minutes later, they are paying their tab and ordering a car to the nearest bedroom. It's been about 3 weeks and they are still hanging out. They really like each other. It's kinda creepy but sweet. He seems happier than usual. I unmatched with them as soon as I realized who it was. We still had a month left in the semester, and she never brought it up. I teach in higher ed, so it's legal, but definitely not worth the headaches and professional fallout it could potentially cause. Awkward at first, but once I got over the fact I was homeschooled, we went back to our place for extra credit. I went on a date a couple weeks ago with a former student. I was an adjunct prof and she was in my class. I thought she was cute and I had a suspicion she was queer too, but obviously wasn't going to do anything while I was teaching. When she came up on Tinder, I'm no longer teaching university. I swiped right and we matched. She is only a couple years younger than me though and the class was a couple years ago. We're hopefully going out again soon and we'll see what happens. Oh grave a circumflex a diaresis. I once drunk splurged on Tinder Gold, or whatever the duck it's called, and noticed my current intern had swiped right on me. Yeah, I had to ignore that one for a while, all the while keeping that secret for the rest of semester. I matched with one of my online professors last semester. He has a unique name and once I realized who he was I unmatched, even if it's legal, and at our ages, it would be. It's still a small town and I didn't want to bring the drama on us. Not Tinder, but teacher related. I had a friend who was up for anything. Flirted with everyone. Hooked up with anyone. Give him a dare and he'd do it before you finished talking. Full of crazy ideas and no limits. Any girl could walk up to him and kiss him out if the blue and he'd be on board immediately. Lots of fun and we all assumed there would be nothing he'd say no to. Until one night we all walked into a bar in our early 20s and a girl danced up to him for some close quarters work. Without a pause he immediately turned around, handed his full drink to a stranger, said we're leaving and walked out without turning around to see if we were behind him. After about half a block of fast walking he told us she had been a student of his last year and still attended his school. He teaches grade 10 math. Even though drinking age is only 19 here, she obviously got in with fake ID. One of the group made a joke about him getting so freaked out BC he must have been in trouble for hooking up with a student before. And the lecture he rounded on him about taking advantage of kids sexually when you're in a position of authority made it clear that he wasn't scared of repercussions. It was his limit. The one thing he wouldn't do, ever. You guys are getting matches? My youngest brother, 24, matched up with a seemingly nice girl on Tinder. They started dating afterwards. She was a probation officer for the county and had been doing it for a few years. My brother was and is currently on probation for arson. They were together for about 6 months when they came to dinner at my place, during which I asked her about her job. She told me she is a probation officer. I then asked her if them being together is a problem since he is on probation. She froze for a good minute, then said she didn't know that he was on probation. The rest of dinner was awkward. Couple weeks later, when talking to my brother, he told me that she decided to stay with him, even though it was against the rules for her job. I guess she was hoping they would never find out, but they did less than a week later. She got fired and will probably never work in that field again. My brother broke up with her the next month. He had the nerve to tell me that he broke up with her because she was being lazy, had no money, and was depressed a lot. I told him he was a giant ducking scumbag. I don't think he even understood why she was depressed. He did not feel bad at all and didn't think he was to blame, even a little bit. He is a big piece of it. I unmatched us as soon as the notification came in and realized who it was. I teach university. A year or so after the end of the class she took under me, she pops up and laughed. I thought there'd be no way she yesed me, so I swiped right for giggles. Instant match. I couldn't believe it. Turns out she wanted to hook up the whole time but didn't want to open that can of worms. We went on a date, and she was by far the worst duck of my life. Animal in bed, oh yeah. Starfish. Way before Tinder, we had a HS teacher, an way older male who taught math, have an affair with a female student. She was a senior that turned 18 at the end of the school year, but they had been together over a year. He and his wife divorced, and he married the 18-year-old. He was allowed to keep teaching, and when she graduated college she was hired as a teacher in the same school in his department. Of course this was in the late 1970s and I graduated in 1982, but I had them both as teachers. Didn't match, but I saw one of my students on Tinder saying they were 20 when they most definitely were not. I informed the parents that I'd received an anonymous tip that either they were on Tinder or someone was using their photos. Not the story most people are looking for here, I'm sure, but the right thing to do. This story comes from pre-Tinder days, but I'm the product of a student and her second year maths lecturer. Student and lecturer ended up getting married, starting a family and growing old together, but there was some serious fallout. Lecturer's supervisor decided student was a harlot and tried to manipulate the entire maths department into flunking her. When nobody would comply, he kept trying until the day she had to call in sick for her final honors exam. She verbally told supervisor she was in hospital and unable to attend. Supervisor said it was fine and she could make it up when she was well. The next week she rocked up, ready to take the exam, only to be told she'd flunked and there was no second chance to sit the exam. He denied all knowledge of the conversation. Student still managed second class honors, despite all this. Just so I'm sure I'm reading these stories correctly, swipe right equals keep, swipe left equals toss, ? Penthouse letters from my youth. I thought all these letters were scripted lies, until it happened to me. A story I heard from a friend was about a guy just starting his first year teaching out of college. He was in a high school math class or something like that. His first day teaching he walked into class and saw the girl he had been casually seeing all summer. They had met at a college party, gone on multiple dates, and hooked up occasionally. She had a fake ID and pretended that she was a college student. Edit, I honestly had no idea this was from Pretty Little Liars lol. So kinda not really what you're asking for, but never had the chance to tell this story. So, when I was 12 years old, my English teacher had a medical emergency and was out for 4 months. We had a long-term sub. His name, no joke, was MR. Live. And he was gorgeous. Maybe 25. Built, creamy dark skin, a voice like an angel, and he cared about every single student he had. He was the epitome of every middle school girl's hormonal fantasy. 10 years later I'm on the bus going to work. I'm in a committed relationship and pregnant but not showing yet. Who gets on the bus? MR. Live. The only empty seat is next to me, so he takes it. We ride in silence for a moment, but before I can figure out how to break the ice he turns to me and starts working his, still apparent, charm. I've never seen you here before. Do you go this way often? You're a very beautiful woman to be traveling on your own. You know, I'd love to take you out for coffee sometime. At that point, I couldn't stop myself. I said, "Did you sub for an English class 10 years ago? Because if your name is MR, I was one of your students. I thought you were so attractive back then." He balked at that and got off the bus at the next stop. As someone who is actively on Tinder and who works in high schools, it's frightening how often you'll see someone's profile with the age set at mid-20s, but the first line of the profile is actually 16 or something. I have my age filters set to 25-37. Students in high school will set their birth date to something wrong to get around that because there's so many, mostly ugly, girls who want a sugar daddy and are not afraid to put that in writing. As mentioned above with the first line of profile text, the second line is usually looking for something really sweet or similar. Then finally, 16 photos of bikinis and lingerie. I report every one of them. And if I'm at a school and see the student, I report them to Student Services, the main office. I'm not sure if this counts since I'm not a school teacher, but here's my story anyways. I'm a health and safety instructor and work with a number of organizations teaching them, well, health and safety. I'm teaching at this one location and one of my students and I really hit it off. About a month or so passes and I receive a message from her on Tinder. She asks me if I remember her and I'm thinking to myself, know it. I had to spend 16 hours pretending not to notice my giant crush on you and actively try to not flirt. So yes, I definitely remembered her. Now it should be noted that I am gay and definitely not out at work, and B, I actively try to keep my personal life to myself, especially to my students. Part of me is freaking out thinking I've literally just been outed and I don't know how to react. So I did the only thing I could think of and said maybe we shouldn't do anything until we figure out what the protocol was. Like, since I'm technically not her teacher anymore, would that still be a conflict of interest? Am I allowed to actually go out with her? Well, we end up going on a date and 6 months later, we're still together. Oh, and she no longer works at that company. So no harm, no foul. I better not find any homeschool teachers in here. Oh, not my teacher. But I matched with a middle school teacher when I was 18. He was hot and about 28. I quickly find out he's dominant. Score. Now we are really talking. He confides in me his favorite kink, schoolgirl. What the duck? Immediate unmatch. I didn't match with a school teacher, but I did match with a Sunday school instructor. I was 12 and she was in her early 20s when I attended church. I had my age range from 18-35. You read about them in the newspaper later probably. I remember when they made an attempt to cull the thinly disguised help me jerk off posts on this sub. Seems like it's worse than it ever was now. Not in Tinder, but I downloaded Grindr and set up an account. When I first activated it, I didn't have any age restrictions set up. All of a sudden, I see one of my students. I teach middle school. He was in 8th grade. I called the principal and counselor and made them deal with it. I'm all for keeping kids safe, but that little ducker was lying about his age. Probably could pass for an 18-year-old twink, and some moron would have, or probably had, slept with him. Don't want to come out to your parents? Too bad. Don't advertise your 14-year-old body on a dating app. We homeschool, so my wife says it's never been an experience, much less a problem. But one of her students' father keeps trying to sleep with her and it's getting irksome. When I read this title, my brain played the SVU dun dun noise at the end. Here's a fun story I don't share often. When I was in 6th grade, I had a pretty eccentric teacher who was kind of good looking by teacher standards. She really liked me. Nothing weird happened, but she really took a liking to me because I was kind of an odd kid. I was a super sweet kid, but odd. When I was 21, I went to this bar called Charlie's. It was one of the first few times I'd been into a bar. I was with one of my buddies. I saw her sitting at the bar with a gentleman that looked a little older than her. She didn't look like she was enjoying the date. She was wearing this red dress and was all made up, looking really good. I walked up at an opportune time. Dude went to the bathroom and said hi. Her eyes lit up, she was so happy to see me. She hugged me and I sat where he was sitting. He came back and she barely acknowledged him. After a while he made an excuse to leave. He got the point. Long story short, my 6th grade teacher got the point too that night. The point of my dong, genuinely sorry for that. I matched with my financial aid advisor on a Cupid my freshman year of college. He was also still a student, but already had his bachelor's and was basically just taking classes because they were so cheap for him as an employee. He said, he ended up being the worst person I've literally ever met. Lol. After dating for 6 months we broke up but were on decent terms, so continued to hang out and hook up regularly. Eventually I found out he had a girlfriend during this time and had also had a baby with another girl during the time we were dating that he never told me about. So I was pretty pissed but basically decided to write him off and move on with my life because I was 19 and Duck being some white trash dude's second choice stepmommy for his accidental duck trophy. Yeah, no? This dude went duck in NUCLEAR. He stalked me and threatened to kill me and my family, so I had to get a restraining order against him and he lost his job over it. 2 years later, through a series of super unfortunate events, he assaulted me and attempted to choke me to death. He was ultimately prosecuted but it took over a year and he basically got a slap on the wrist. It's been 5 years since then and he still contacts the few mutual friends we still have every few months to tell them that I've slashed the tires on his car or done something to deface his house or something equally ridiculous. So I've been married for 4 years and moved to another state over 1,200 miles away 3 years ago. So yeah, that was like a super lame time. Nareosus copyright airing. Naosus copyright airing. In my district, one of the teachers revealed to his students that he was on Tinder. The students made up a profile, catfished him, and made him believe he was talking to another adult. Then he sent them D-pics which they showed to everyone. Technically, the teacher did nothing wrong because he thought he was communicating with another adult. He is still teaching but I'm not sure how that works when all of your students have seen your D. Not me, but one of the teachers at the high school I work at matched with one of his students on Grindr. The kid was 16. Teacher came and told us, the school counselors, and we had to sit the kid down and have a conversation about the dangers of lying about his age to have random hookups with older men. He said he had been doing it a while and appreciated that we were concerned about him. He said he did not plan on stopping, but he was obviously not trying to hook up with anyone from the school. The teacher felt so awkward having the kid in his class the rest of the year. I think he maybe wanted to try and mentor the kid a bit to help him stay safe in the cruising scene. But that could get ugly really fast if the parents found out. He graduated and went to uni, so hopefully he is doing okay still. Not exactly a Tinder story, but once me and colleague from work went to high school that was local to our area to pitch a sale to the dean so we can become their paper supplier, and when walking through one of the halls my colleague spotted his GF and asks what she was doing here. At first I thought he was referring to one of the teachers in the hall, but then he said no. She works at some yogurt place. After he realized the problem he might be in, he tried to convince himself that maybe she works at the school, but I wasn't buying it. He tried to confront her but it just got awkward when she said she was late for her Spanish class. That's when he turns to me and defeated says I didn't know, to which I replied that will not hold up in court. I had a high school teacher who ended up marrying a student. Not sure when they actually started dating, but they married sometime when she was in her early 20s and him in his early 30s. I'm a 26-year-old TA. A few of my students have super liked me on Tinder and Bumble. It's so awkward. I hate it. I'm not ever going to date someone I TA'd for. TA student relationships to me are kind of gross. I could understand it with a few years age difference, but the maturity gap between in college out of college is huge. And if you're just ducking someone, you can duck a lot of people you are not teaching. As a grad student, I work as a TA at my university, and because I teach 4 upper level courses my students are pretty close in age, 2-4 years typically. I usually try to just swipe left by default on all current and past students, but one made it through. She was an old student of mine, probably by about 1 year. I got the notification, thought about it for a bit, and unmatched. I felt bad about just unmatching without saying anything. So I messaged her on Instagram and just said that I couldn't because she was my old student, and we ended up talking for a bit. Not going to lie, she is beautiful and I was partially hoping she would try to ask me out anyways. I didn't think there was anything wrong since she wasn't currently my student, but I didn't want to be the one asking, and I would have checked with HR first anyways. Afterwards, I looked it up in the university policy, and there was nothing I could find to stop us. So if she does ever ask me out, I will instantly say yes, but I highly doubt it will ever happen. Not a teacher, but in high school a girl in my grade catfished a lunch monitor into sending nudes, and since she was technically underage he was fired and moved to another school. It was a really weird situation tbh, and she got off scot-free. Well, I'm in prison now, so yeah. I was hyper vigilant about that when I was teaching in Vietnam. The power dynamic in the classroom was essential for maintaining control, and some of the girls had shown signs that they were interested. No matches occurred. A friend of mine came across our politics teacher's husband on a sugar daddy website. That was quite something, really. Other way around. So, I just turned 18 and was feeling pretty down in the dumps. Most of my friends had already moved into their dorms. OkCupid, you can put down that you're searching for friends, but sometimes it still matches you with someone looking for a partner. I download the app and whatnot. As I'm swiping through, I see someone whose name looks vaguely familiar. The profile image was a man in his late 20s conducting a marching band. I thought, oh cool, a musician like me. So I swiped. We were a match. We got to talking about music and how we're both musicians. I do orchestral instruments, and he talks about how he mostly just sticks with band. He offhandedly mentioned how the only time he ever taught orchestra was when he was a student teacher. There was a girl who was like to start, so he was assigned to privately tutor her, and then it dawns on both of us. Actually, it hit us like a truck, really. That girl was me. He was my favorite teacher and we used to joke around when I was young. And here he was awkwardly coming to the realization that his musician dream girl is really his first student. Luckily we were able to joke about it. He apologized, but it was okay, really. We then just started chatting like old friends and exchanged emails. We still chat every now and then. This reminds me of how I want one of my professors. Not the same entirely, but I teach in a trade school college and ended up dating one of my students. She was one of my older students but still 13 years younger than me. We've now been together 8 years and have a daughter. It was incredibly stressful, not getting caught, keeping such a big secret. At one point I had to find an excuse to get out of proctoring her final exam. Once it finally got out after her graduating, it definitely slowed my career down for a bit. There wasn't much they could do officially, but the dean certainly was annoyed. But I think I've recovered now. It was 100% worth it. Best thing I ever did. Got fired. College. So it is all good.